Right, as we continue looking at the retrenchments at the SABC, I'm joined now by South African National Editors Forum Chairperson Ngalwa and Media Monitoring Africa's Head of Policy, Thandi Smith. It's good to have you both with us tonight. Thandi, I'll start with you. Looking at an SABC reporting today a 500 million rand loss, the South African broadcaster saying to us today that it seems they've got a poor collections policy. Not only that, they've got this public mandate that is unfunded that they are dealing with, and from the unions, it seems they're moving away from that public mandate into a more commercial structure. Is this turnaround plan sustainable?
Well, I think that I suppose, one can say that the turnaround strategy is being implemented according to the guidelines and the conditions set out in the turnaround strategy. And I suppose what one or a lot of people aren't really considering or thinking about is that, there aren't many other options given other than the turnaround strategy in place. We're expecting the public broadcaster and the SABC to, not follow through with various elements of these turnaround strategies, but, where are the alternative solutions? What are the other avenues that they would be able to consider if not implementing the turnaround strategy that has been directed by Parliament and by the Treasury?
Government Technical Advisory Centre, who are saying to the minister, but the SABC has not explored all avenues. For example, they have not given a comprehensive plan as to what this new structure is going to look like. What is the SABC of the future going to look like, and what are those jobs, and how do those jobs speak to the current internal staff that is there, and how much of that staff would need to be upskilled? Who are these guys, and how much weight do they pull in this whole turnaround strategy?
Well, I think that there are a couple of issues to consider here. And first and foremost, we are dealing with a very, very different institution currently than we had, 2, 3, 4 years ago. And it is a process. So, to say that change needs to happen immediately and, I guess that we need to give the board, the current board, the first sort of independent board, an opportunity to implement these changes and to present these plans. But I think it is a very tense, very complicated situation. And, I think if there was an easy answer that there would be that followed through it, then I think another point to make, something really important, is that we're not dealing with the SABC in isolation when it comes to these issues of, financial support and funding and how the institution needs to make a turnaround. The entire media industry has gone through this and is going through this. You've seen media institutions across the globe, not only here, having to re-look at their structures, having to innovate around how to make money and how to fundraise. We forget that, although the SABC is our public broadcaster and is a public institution, they are also, at the end of the day, a media entity, and it's an incredibly challenging environment at the moment.
I actually want to talk about exactly that, Sbu. It is a challenging media environment at the moment. You've had a one-on-one with the president as SANEF, and you've raised these issues to say, President, the media industry as a whole is taking a beating. COVID-19 has made it worse. Even before COVID-19, we have been seeing a whole lot of movements within the media space, media companies letting go of essential key workers. He hasn't come back to you, I suppose, with a solution as to how we're going to support the media industry. Are you surprised at all to hear that the SABC is pushing ahead with Section 189?
I think, Tabo, the important point here is that this is a hearing of the SABC's restructuring. Obviously, is a sad development for us as SANEF, because these are our colleagues, these are people we work with, and these are media workers, and not all of them are journalists, of course. But I think that the most crucial thing is that, as Thandi is saying, the pain is being felt throughout the industry. SABC is not the first one to restructure. We can't tell SABC not to restructure. But I think what is important about the SABC is the public service mandate that they serve.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond, because for instance, you've mentioned COVID-19. SANEF did a research which looked at the impact of COVID-19 on the industry. And we found that 700 journalists lost their jobs. 80 small publications across the country had to close down. Now, those 80 publications are serving communities in provinces and in small regions. Now, what does that mean? It means that those communities are without a voice. They cannot be heard,
yeah,
because there is no local media that represents them. That is what then underlines the role of a public broadcaster. Because you would know that the SABC has a wide geographical footprint, and also in terms of offering indigenous languages.
Yeah.
So that is why our concern with the restructuring was saying to the SABC that we would like to get an assurance from the management that insofar as its public service mandate is concerned, that they are able to continue to deliver on that, and that the regions are protected from this restructuring, because the SABC has to deliver a service which goes beyond what those other small private companies cannot do.
Well, I mean, that brings us to the issue that Thandi was raising earlier on, to say, well, there aren't many avenues for that. Basically, it brings us to the fact that the SABC has got to go back to government and knock at Treasury and say, give us more money to fund this unfunded public service mandate. Because as far as revenue is concerned, that is not looking good, because there's less advertising currently, even because of the economy and the atmosphere that we are in right now.
Exactly, and the issue there, Thabo, is that when the SABC got a bailout, they actually, one of the commitments they had made was that they would cut back on a bloated salary bill. So one way or the other, hence we're saying that, I mean, it would be unfair of us to say, do not restructure. But obviously that restructure has to be done in such a way that the SABC still maintains its integrity and still continues to deliver the crucial service that it plays. Because if you look at the figures of their viewership, actually, of Xhosa News and Zulu News at the SABC during COVID-19 period, in fact, during March and June, they grew by anything between 40 and 60%. What does that tell you? It tells you the important role that the SABC plays in informing the public, and also the need for credible news. So hence the concern there. Now, secondly, Thabo, on the issue of funding, the reality is that companies have to come up with funding models. We still do not have a magic bullet. We do not know as to what model will sustain us going forward. You asked earlier about our interaction with the president. Look, we will be having interaction with the government, but also bring in other stakeholders. That's what we're interested in, to say, how do we ensure that the media in South Africa continues to play its role as a watchdog of this democracy beyond COVID-19? And our problems do not start with COVID-19, as you rightfully said in the beginning.
Thandi, how do you think this is going to play out? You've got lawmakers who are supporting the turnaround strategy. You've got a political head. Of course, she is looking at the politics of the matter, saying, well, we don't support the retrenchment. And you've got management saying, well, we're going ahead because for us, this is the only way we survive. How is this going to end?
Well, I mean, I think from exactly your statement now and what you point out, you've got completely contradicting views from people who are supposed to be leading us through this process. You know, when you have Parliament, Treasury, the Minister, and SABC sort of on different angles and on different sides of the story, you don't have a coherent plan that can take place. You know, and I think it's important to point out, you know, from MMA's side, is that we are completely sympathetic to those that are affected by this process, especially at this time of year. And SABC really do have the duty to follow through with the process, well, the correct processes legally and within their relevant HR processes. But it's a complete, you know, it's a very, very challenging situation where you've been told to cut down on the wage bill.
Yeah.
And, you know, also important to know that the initial number of retrenchments has been reduced as well. And so it is a very sticky situation, and it becomes a politicized issue as well, which we've seen how it's played out before.
Sticky situation indeed, and as you see with the group head of news at the SABC saying, well, look, I can't continue then with this particular Section 189 process under the current climate. This, as of course the staff that you saw in that video literally taking it on, saying, but how do you say to 400 families represented here, maybe that number extends, to say, well, you're out of work?
It can be an easy time. I think it is a very difficult time for staff at the SABC and also for the group executive for news. I mean, because she has to lead a newsroom, in fact, various newsrooms across the country, and be able to deliver content to the audiences, and also if there's a threat of a blackout.
Yeah.
That does not only, it's not only about the SABC downing tools, it's about the crucial service that the SABC renders. Yeah. So it is quite understandable why a Padisoma Ngopeni would say, I cannot continue to issue these letters, let's find a different way, because obviously issues have reached, have come to a head, as we saw earlier. And in any case, there is nothing you can do that can change the fact that restructuring processes are painful and highly emotive processes. So it's in how they are managed. And I think that that's what the crucial thing will be now for the SABC, in terms of how do they manage this process going forward, but also how to make sure that they maintain the integrity of the SABC, because the SABC has come a long way from the days of Claude Mutsoneng, if I may say. You know, so it's important that they actually are able to continue doing the good job that they've been doing.
Thandi Smith, appreciate your time from Media Monitoring Africa, and the chairperson of SANEF with us here in the studio, Sbu Ngala.